Russian President Vladimir Putin was afraid to hold a large-scale naval parade in his native St. Petersburg on the day of the Russian Navy. Normally, this is one of the most important days for Putin's public image. The parade is broadcast on television, and Putin shows off the power of his navy. This time, however, he had to adjust his commands to the reality on the ground. The Russian president emphasized that he was observing the exercises of the Russian Navy in working mode. In reality, as is clear, they were afraid to hold the parade due to the drone attacks. Because of these attacks, St. Petersburg's international airport had to be closed for 6 hours. As a result, Putin's press secretary Dmitry Peskov, along with other officials, was forced to wait 4 hours on a plane before being able to reach St. Petersburg and comment on Putin's actions and statements. For several hours, the Russian president had to act as his own press secretary because Peskov was stuck in Moscow. This de facto cancellation of the major parade served as yet another reminder to Putin that the war between Russia and Ukraine is not limited to moments when Russian missiles and drones destroy Ukrainian infrastructure, kill women and children, and paralyze life in peaceful Ukrainian cities. It is also a situation in which Ukrainian drones can paralyze Russia's own infrastructure and even call into question the ability of the aggressor state to maintain its civilian aviation system. And the parades are not the only issue. Putin himself is effectively forced to hide from Ukrainian drones. This is not the first time. Thus, the logic of a war of attrition Putin substitute for his failed blitzkrieg of 2022 can work both ways. This applies to the rapid development of drones by both Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine does not need permission from its Western allies to use its drones to strike Russian targets on dates important to Russians. This is similar to how Western sanctions can paralyze certain sectors of Russian economy, and it's becoming clear that if US President Donald Trump, who is slowly beginning to realize that Putin does not intend to end the war, if he starts to pressure not only the Russian president but also his partners in the global south, it could determine Russia's oil and refining industry. It could undermine Russia's oil and refining industries. Moreover, the oil refining industry could be hit not only by Trump's sanctions but also by Ukrainian drone strikes, and as was already demonstrated in the earlier stages of the fierce Russia-Ukrainian confrontation. Putin may pretend that he doesn't need parades and that merely observing his navy from a patrol boat is enough. But everyone understands how much the Russian president needs to project the image of his country's greatness to reinforce his narrative that only capitulation to Russia can end the war the way Putin wants. Instead of greatness, Russian officials are now forced to wait 4 hours on their official planes because they are not allowed to land in Putin's hometown. Instead of greatness, Russian airports must now almost daily report interruptions in departures and arrivals. Among these airports, as we know, are Moscow's Sheremetyevo, Vnukovo and Domodedovo. And now we also see St. Petersburg Pulkovo airport on that list, along with the international airport in Sochi, Putin's favorite resort, where Russian citizens recently spent many hours stranded. These are citizens indifferent to the killing of civilians in Ukraine, but not indifferent to the disruptions of their vacations in the humid climate of the Caucasian resort. It is fair to say that with each passing day, month and year of the Russia-Ukraine war, this fierce confrontation between Russians and Ukrainians, the war will increasingly reach Russians as well. Their lives are being transformed into an existence defined by the daily reality of an endless war of attrition, forcing the majority of Russian citizens to give up their usual way of life in favor of security measures and a constant awareness of living under the threat of hostile attack. There is only one logical way out: to stop the aggression against Ukraine. Withdraw from the territories occupied since 2014, attempt at least to return to the civilized world, and recognize the futility of trying to destroy international law. However, this is clearly not an option for Putin, who still believes that a prolonged war will help him eliminate Ukraine's statehood and annex its territory. It is not an option for Russians who are convinced that the best government is one that seizes foreign lands and punishes those who refuse to submit to Russian will. It is also not an option for the Russian military, which has always received attention from the leadership only when waging aggressive wars, destroying foreign cities and killing foreign citizens. Therefore, hoping that Russia's leaders or its citizens will draw logical conclusions from what happened today in St. Petersburg is pointless. But when such unpleasant events occur repeatedly and become routine, sooner or later they will force Russians to realize the futility of their hopes that a long, endless war will bring them Ukraine, rather than destruction and a bleak future for life inside Russia itself. That is, in fact, the usual outcomes of any endless war, no matter who hopes to benefit from it. For Russians, the future holds not parades, but an inevitable disappointment in their aggressive ambitions. Thank you for watching, have a nice day, and Slava Ukraini!